Buenas tardes, bienvenidos a ¿Qué Pasa Mujer? Welcome to ¿Qué Pasa Mujer? We're here every Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Estamos aquí todos los domingos a las 4 de la tarde. Hoy tenemos una invitada muy especial y todavía estamos celebrando el mes de la herencia hispana. So today we have a very special guest as we're still celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month here in the United States. So we're extremely excited about that. So we're going to go ahead and bring Maddie on. Maddie Garcia. The author, the poet, the woman, the mother, the wife, the financial expert, the friend, all of that.
Thank you. Gracias. Buenas tardes. ¿Qué pasa, mujer? Gracias, Viviana, for that introduction. Oh, my God. So always nice to be here. Glad to see everybody and super excited about today's show. I have so much I want to say, so much I'm thinking, so much. So, yeah, you're going to hear a lot about me today.
Hey, did you know that today is National Sunday? S-O-N?
Yes.
I was telling my son, and he said, "Mom, it is Sunday." I said, "No, Sun, S-O-N, Sunday." He's like, "Oh my gosh." But yeah, something that, for the mothers and fathers out there, make sure that you celebrate with your children because it is National Sun, S-O-N Day. And then we're still celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. Tell me some things that you've done so far to celebrate, Maddie.
Celebrating, like I said, I think we talked a little bit about this, and I said I was going to get like t-shirts so I could wear to work, just celebrating my culture. So I have gotten an array of like t-shirts, like the one that I wore yesterday had a thumbprint with a Dominican flag, and then he said it's in my DNA. We wore one on Friday saying Hispanic Heritage Month, and he had like all the flags in Latin America. So I got a couple of more, that I'm gonna, we get to wear t-shirts on Fridays and Saturdays. So when I do work Saturdays, we wear t-shirts and jeans. So, I'm excited about that every time I, show up with my new t-shirt. And then also, of course, have been sharing, profiles of Hispanics that make us proud here in the Hampton Roads area. I usually every year will post, people of significant, impact in the Hispanic community nationwide. And I am, proud to be posting our local people. And actually Viviana was the first person that I shared about. So just people that I happen to know, that I'm proud to know that are making an impact in the communities that they serve, and that I feel like everybody should know about them. So thank you, Viviana, for letting me brag a little bit about you.
Yes, I love it. It's so funny because you and I didn't talk about it, but we're actually doing the same thing. I think I honored myself. I think I started off with like just talking about people like myself. And then I talked about my mother, my aunts, my grandmother, just people in my world that have been around that are significant. And then just kind of, we always try to throw the numbers and the statistics out there. And so that's why I'm super excited about our guest today, because the topic we're going to talk about today is not talked about enough. I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but definitely in my household is not. It's just the relationships between mothers and daughters, or moms and sons, they just happen, and sometimes we don't discuss the real things that come along with it. So I am excited about our guest. So we're going to go ahead and bring her on so we can go ahead and get started. Because we have lots to talk about. So you can go ahead and bring her on, Mark.
Hello. ¿Qué pasa, mujer?
Hey, good afternoon. This is Lin Green, and she is an author of a book called Enough with the Secrets, Mama. In Spanish or English, you can say that.
Basta con los secretos, mamá.
Sí. And of course, Maddie just recently finished reading the book, if I'm not mistaken. So that's why she's so hyped right now. Like, I don't know if you guys can see, but she's glowing. It's like an extra type of glow today because I think she just finished reading the book. Um, but we're very excited, Lynn, to have you on the show because I love your shirt. What does your shirt say?
Oh, yes. My shirt represents Que Pasa Mujer and every mujer. It says, Yo soy mujer, valiente, latina, inteligente, independiente, orgullosa, poderosa, fuerte, preparada, leal y segura.
Oh my God.
All of those things
So
are
true. I love that shirt. Yes, I love it. Yeah, and you know that's the definition of a woman in Spanish, English, German, whatever language we speak. You know, we bring so much to the table for ourselves and to be able to help whoever else is around us. Um, so, Lynn, I wanted you to tell us a little bit about who you are. Why are you doing what you do today in your professional life and your personal life?
Yes. Well, first of all, I am a child of God, and it's only because of Him that I am doing what I'm doing today. I am one of six children between my mother and my father. I am the youngest on my mother's side. Technically, the book goes into what that means exactly, because my mother also took on my niece who raised her, and she raised her as her daughter. I am a 44-year-old woman going through perimenopause, so Lord, please help me.
Welcome to the
Um,
club. Okay.
Yes, I am married to my wonderful husband, now 11 years married. His name is Mikkel. I call him my business genius. He is actually the person who helps me take risks because I am not necessarily the risk taker in this relationship. I have a son, so happy International Sons Day to all the boy moms,
Yeah.
who's 24 years old now. And I am probably the most reserved in my family. But through this whole process, I've obviously I've had to come out of my shell for the purpose and the mission, which is spreading the message of Enough with the Secrets Mama, which is maternal healing. I think that was definitely a calling that was kind of dropped on me one day, and I was pretty much just nudged to share the message because I think it's necessary. I am also a law enforcement professional. I am a crisis interventionist and advocate for a law enforcement agency where I am. I've been with this agency for about 19 years now. And in this capacity as an advocate for 10 years. Prior to that, I was a juvenile probation officer working with juveniles. So I have had my share of working with the Department of Juvenile Justice, working in federal government. And then, as if that's not enough, I also have a consulting business with my husband where we consult to small businesses and nonprofits. So I'd like to say right now in this moment, I am just living my passion for connecting with others, especially women, as it relates to this message, and just really helping do the work of resilience with people in the community and helping people grow and heal.
What a mouthful. I love it. You
And
know,
the show is over.
Stop there.
I just love it. So my mom gave me, here's Lily Mato. She said, "Oh my God." So she, you know, she loves all the stuff that you're doing. But she gave me the Latino magazine. She bought it this week and she brought it to me. And so one of the statistics that are on there is Latinos will make up 20% of the US population by 2060. 1 in 4 new businesses is Hispanic owned.
Yes.
4.1 trillion GDP of Latino businesses are in the United States. So there's a lot of considering all the stuff that's happening in our country with people getting deported and all that stuff. We're still contributing to the economy. We're still growing. Our businesses, our families, our students are still going to school. They're still graduating. So we have really, we're overcoming many things. And I just think that it is, you know, and we thank Pod TV and Roku TV all the time for the platform that they provide. Because like I told, you know, Lynn, we have the liberty to discuss everything that we discuss here, and it's always in a positive manner because we like to highlight people like you, Lynn, you and your husband. just it just sounds like you guys are, of course, not perfect, but very well-rounded people trying to do a lot of positive things to impact not just your household, but things people outside of your household as well. So I think that's crucial. I wanted you to tell me a little bit about why this, and I know you do other things besides the book, but I just find this topic very interesting. I'm an only child, and I'm the oldest granddaughter, and so there's things that maybe today I have had some raw conversations with my mother and my grandmother, but I know we haven't tapped into everything, right? And so I wanted you to tell me a little bit about why you decided to write this book, Enough with the Secrets, Mama.
Yes, and thank you for giving me the opportunity, because it's been an emotional journey, to say the least, but it's been so healing. Not just I felt like I had healed at the point I decided to write the book already, but even through the sharing of my story and connecting with other women, and the confirmation I've received by writing this, and other women telling me, "Oh my goodness, like." That is me. This is the life that I have lived. The reason I wrote it was because I felt like I had lived my life, a good majority, as much as you can call majority. I'm at 44, right? Of my life, just with, like, I felt like a little penita en el corazón, like a little pain in my heart that constantly nudged at me. And I just didn't understand why, if I felt like I was the most amazing child, right? And of course, I'm dramatizing a little bit on that, but I tried to be the perfect child for my mother. And I was not receiving the love that I felt I deserved. And it was trying to understand that, and where that comes from, and why she was the mother that she was for us growing up, was how this book was birthed. Obviously, I had gone through the process of healing through therapy. I really couldn't talk to her too much about it, because conversations didn't really go too much of anywhere. I used to get the defensive, like, what do you mean? Are you calling me a bad mother? And it wasn't that. It was just that I felt like I was sandwiched between my brother and my sister, because they needed her more, in her words. And so I just really wanted other women who have heard that. The phrase was, ellos me necesitan más, or tú eres responsable, tú no, por ti yo no me tengo que mortificar. I don't have to worry about you at all. You're responsible. You got it all together. But I still needed my mom, and I found, in conversation with women in the community, that there were more people that felt that way. And I found myself having these conversations over and over. And for me, that was confirmation that I needed to share the story of how I came through it, and try to help others do the same.
Yeah, I first want to say thank you for your vulnerability, and for, opening up, and, taking the step to kind of put it in writing. I have a very good friend of mine that says, you're going to live forever now. So congratulations on that. I do want to say, when I saw the title, or when you see the title, the first thing you think is, oh, she's going to say everything about her mom. It's like, that's kind of immediately where you go through. But as you read the book, it's not enough with the secrets, mama, but it also, it's about you. It's you personally. It's your secrets. It's your story. It's like, I'm not hiding behind anything anymore. This is me. So it goes beyond your mom. It's also about you. So I appreciated that. Also love how in every chapter, you talked about a topic, and then it's like you ask a question in between. It's like, is it? Kind of leaving it up to the reader, and opening the door for, like, the next part of the story. So beautifully written, and I enjoyed it very much. It was weird, because when you're reading something that talks about the story of a person that it's like, I thought I knew, but I didn't know. And then, oh my God, and it's like, it just gives you a total different perspective. And I think that happens with everybody, because when we read memoirs of famous people, we think we know them, and it's like you start reading and you're like, oh, I didn't know that, so it just hit me different because of the connection that you and I have, outside. So again, I appreciated that and I love that. But when I started reading the book, I'm sorry, I have like a whole notebook worth of notes here that that I am gonna kind of tap into. um, I also love how you talked about your mother and your relationship. Like we say, like we've been saying, the relationship was not perfect. You needed your mom. She wasn't perfect, but she was always your mom. She was always a fighter. She was always somebody you look up to, no matter what happened to her, what she did wrong or what she did right. I love that you never stop highlighting how much you admired your mom. And I think that was beautiful. And it's wonderful because we always think about, the people that we look up to, they're perfect and they never did anything wrong. And, on the book, it's anything but that. Your immigrant story. Can you tell us? And I'm about to start crying because, as you guys know, I love my mom. So
my tears were already starting to well as we were talking. My eyes were starting to well up with tears. So
when I hear you talk about your mom, it's like, but tell me a little bit about your immigrant story, because we always talk about, like we come, Hispanics come to this country because, we trying to look for a better life. And for you guys, it was a little bit different. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, and let me also just state the entire title of the book, because there's the title and then the subtitle. And so it's Enough with the Secrets, Mama, an immigrant woman's story of overcoming failure, equipping women with the skills they need to live a life free of maternal heartache. And so for me, it was important as I was healing my relationship with my mother and trying to understand her, to start from the very beginning, where she came from, the life that she lived, how we ended up, coming here. So my mother was born in the Dominican Republic. She was born in La Romana. All of my family, on my mother's side is from the Dominican Republic. I speak a little bit in the book about the migration of Dominicans to Puerto Rico, which is how we came about. And there's so many Dominicans in Puerto Rico and born in Puerto Rico, and a lot of people don't know that. So she met my father in Puerto Rico. And obviously that was a journey to try to get closer to a life of freedom. Puerto Rico was the closest that we can get. And so she met my father there. They ended up having a not so healthy relationship. The relationship became toxic pretty much by the time I was 1. And soon after, my mother decided to work up a plan to leave Puerto Rico. And ultimately, we ended up here. Puerto Rico to Dominican Republic to here, because Dominican Republic was home. That's where my grandmother was and her parents and her family was. That's how we migrated here to the United States. We landed in, of all places, the smallest state in the United States of America, Providence, Rhode Island. And that is where I learned to speak English. Just coming from, all I knew was Spanish, this, life that I was born into, and to an entirely different country. And it's interesting because most people who hear me speak, number one, just think I'm Black. They don't hear an accent, but I literally learned English here. Sesame Street was my absolute favorite. With all the words, I think that was a precursor to my learning. And then, right into elementary school, I picked up English very quickly, and reading and writing. And, that's been a passion that I have had forever. That migrating here, coming from a different, country, was interesting because we actually came from a more privileged background, in that my mother had a person who cooks for her. We had a nanny. She was a businesswoman. She had salons. My grandfather was also well off. That, my family actually was really into business, and they had set themselves up pretty good in the Dominican Republic. And most people will say, well, then why come here? And it was for the education. My mother wanted us to have a good education. She didn't think that it compared, to what the United States could provide. And we roughed it out. We got food stamps, we got the block cheese, we lived in the projects, you name it. That has been my migration story.
I love that. I love that you share all of that because, like Maddie was saying, the vulnerability, because we just don't arrive, right? And everything is great. And I want to do spiral back a little bit to what Maddie said about the structure of your book. Because when you were talking, and Maddie was talking earlier, a couple of years ago, like right before COVID, I wanted to go to a therapist because I wanted to improve my relationship with my mom, right? So I was like, let me go to someone that speaks both Spanish and English because she's going to talk to both of us so that she could tell her what's wrong with her, right? So then I go to the therapy session and the focus is only on me, which is, the structure of your book. It's like, yes, you can have a concern with other people, but you really have to look at yourself, right? In order to have better relationships with other people. So I was just thinking about that as you guys were talking, but I just think it's, as individuals, we see Lynn as this person who is today, right? But we don't ever stop to think like, what were her struggles? What has she been through? And a lot of the times we forget that you're a human being, like the rest of us. So it just requires whatever grind you have gone through, whatever struggles, and that you're still here and that you're constantly working at making your best better. And I just think it's awesome that you do this. So I think that that's amazing. And just before we go on, I just want to acknowledge some of our viewers: Jacqueline Harley, Tangi, Lily Matos, and also Michelle. She's watching us from Chile as well. So we have some. So usually we have people watching us from here in the United States, and then Colombia, Chile, Venezuela. So we have other people watching us. So we just want to acknowledge the fact that they're watching us today. But I just think it's awesome, Lynn. I was going to ask you, Maddie, what is the what you already kind of talked a little bit about the structure of the book, but what is one thing that really stood out to you, different from what you've already stated? Because I haven't read the book.
Girl, I have 2 pages. I have 2 pages of things that I want to talk about, that I want to highlight. And then, of course, I have my favorite paragraph and quotes. Because if you know me, I'm a quotes person. I love quotes. And I got a few from the book. But I'll get into all of that. But I just kind of want to go down the line, talk a little bit. So spoiler alert for you, Viviana. So I'm going to be talking about all the topics in the book. But the next thing that I wanted to talk about, because you do highlight, sometimes in our culture, being married or having a partner, you kind of fight and you do everything that you have to do to keep your family together, especially when there are children present. You will put up with stuff, you will overlook stuff because the goal is to have a family and to keep your family together, and it's not going to be a family unless it's with the father of my children. And you talk about your mom history with her partners and your dad, and then meeting your stepdad and how he stood up, separó y, he took charge and he raised you guys, and you acknowledge him as the only father that you've known is your stepdad. So do you think that that relationship and that role model that he presented, for you, kind of made you who you are? Because you go further to talk about your own relationships and not putting up with something just because, do you think that had an impact in your life as a woman and the decisions that you made for yourself?
Absolutely. I think having the word stepfather is so hard because I've only really ever known him as my father. Because, like I said, my mother left my biological father early on. I've never had a relationship with him because it just never got to that. But my father was, to me, it's crazy because he was the then Secret Service agent to the then Dominican president before he came here to the United States. You see him and you think like, oh my God, this guy is tough. But he was the softest man when it came to us, to the girls, to his girls. He was married prior to my mom as well, and he had daughters, all daughters. And here we came along, and we were all girls. The story of how my brother ended up separating from us is one that maybe we'll talk about in a little bit. But just in terms of my dad, he really gave me hope for what a man and a father and a husband should be. And I look at him with eyes of love and a heart just full with gratitude, because I know now the mother or the woman my mother was all these years and the things that she struggled with, and how I could see him trying. I really could see him trying to make it work. And so for sure, he, for me, if anything, was the ray of sunshine or the beacon of hope to men in general, because that could have gone a completely different way. I could have been resentful of men, overall, just with knowing that our father never looked to seek us out and have a relationship with us. So he definitely filled me with that hope for men in general.
That's awesome. Let me ask you, Viviana, because I know that you were raised by strong women in your life, and you're very vocal about the women in your life. Do you have a similar sentiment when it comes to your dad?
So I don't, because I was raised without my dad, right? But as I became a mother, I reached out to him because I wanted my boys to have a relationship with him, right? And so I think that that's important. Just because I had a struggle with you, we can overcome that and just kind of switch it back so that we can either fix it or, because my children have nothing to do with the relationship that I have with my father. So to this day, my father does have a relationship with me and my grandkids. And so I wouldn't say that it's at 100%. There's topics that I've tried to have. And when it's just him and I, it's difficult to have those conversations. But if his mom is there or his sister is there, then we can have those transparent conversations a little bit better. And today, being 47, I have found I have my answers to the questions that I've had growing up. But definitely my mom and my grandmother and my aunts have been pillars for me to be able to see. Like, I purchased my first home when I was like 22. And even though I have a lot of things, that stuff you were talking about in your heart towards maybe my mother, like she has always been my number one cheerleader, always. I felt a lot of fear buying a house that young, and she was like, no, you could do it. Like, she didn't say, oh, I'm gonna help you do it, or I got you. No, she said you could do it. So she empowered me to do all of those things. And I hate to say to people like, your mother's your father and your mother, because I think that everybody has a different role. So I give my mom 100% credit for being my mother. I don't think that she was able to teach me things that my father would have, but definitely she in her mistakes, she has given me 100% of her. Most definitely. And that's what I was going to ask you, Lynn, because of the challenges that you've had, just looking back at the challenges with your mother or the lack of your real father there, and having, the person that raised you as your male role model. What are some adjustments that you have made with your own son so that he doesn't have the mentality of like, mom, like, what are you doing? So it's not going to be perfect. I know it's not, but what are some things that you intentionally have done to alleviate that trauma or hurt?
Yeah, so I'll start with just the little bit of the story without spoiling too much about how my son came to be. I was 19 years old, about 18, 19 when I met his father. And we weren't together very long. And I happened to have found out that I was pregnant about 4 months after we had already broken up. And I, like my mother, was very decided on, if this is not going to work for me, then I am going this way. And I did. And for me, in the moment when I found out that I was pregnant, I had to make a decision to be a responsible party and say, look, I know we're not together anymore. I actually had to go to a payphone and make this call right outside the hospital. And I said, I just want to let I'm pregnant, and I'm letting you know this because I feel it's my responsibility. I, like my mother, muy orgullosa, um, le dije, I do not need anything from you. I don't expect anything from you. I'm literally just calling to tell you this fact. And obviously, I'm going to keep this baby, as scared out of my mind as I was at like 20, almost 20 years old. Because I was in college, and I was like trying to finish school. And if you know anything about me as you read the book, you know that that was so important to me. Again, the trying to be the perfect child, I have to finish school. So when my son came along, from day one, I knew that I was going to give him my sole attention. I was going to do things differently than my mother had done. I was going to give his father the opportunity to ultimately have a relationship with him. But also knowing to create boundaries, within that relationship, to ensure that my son was not going to feel that he was not wanted, because ultimately I explain in the book how he did not want me to have this child. But all the daughter of Teolinda Ogando that I am, I said, I don't care what you say. I'm going to have this child and I'm going to figure it out. And I did. I ultimately prayed that someone would come along just as my father was to us and would be an amazing father to my son. And God blessed me with that. And I was determined to be more vocal and a little bit more understanding. I wanted to be present for him. And because of that, I kind of lost my chance of having any other children, because I was like so focused on him that I said, I want to be attended to every moment. Any questions or concerns that you have, I want you to talk to me about them. I don't ever want you to feel that even though I'm a disciplinarian, that I don't care what your feelings are. Also understanding that I was raising a boy, and fighting that conflict of boys should be tough, and, also trying to be soft, and, all of those things. So it as a first time mom, it certainly was quite a journey. But that was my focus. I wanted to break the cycle. And I wanted him to feel like I hadn't felt, which was seen. I wanted him to feel seen, and that was my focus with him as my child and me as his mother.
So I want to ask you a couple of questions. I want to kind of backtrack a little bit because I wasn't ready. Like my bullet points were not to your son yet. But
that one went way over.
Yeah. You guys went ahead. You went to chapter like 12 or something like that. Anyway, I wanted you to touch on two topics that are, like we said, a lot of the things that you talk about is things that we don't discuss in our everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
You talk very candidly about your brother's struggle with addiction, and you talk about being 6 years old and visiting hospitals with your mom to see if your brother was in there. So I know addiction is one of those things, especially alcoholism, is one of the things that is seen as natural in our country because everybody drinks and everybody gets drunk. So that's not a problem. Just because you get drunk every weekend, you only do it on the weekend, that is not a problem. But the weekend that you don't do it, it is a problem. So I think that's one of the addictions that is not talked about, especially in our countries. And you said that that's how he started and then moved into other things. Talk a little bit about the impact that relationship had on your mother and on you growing up, and the example that you didn't want to set for your son.
Yes. I would say that it was this relationship that my mother had with my brother of what we came to know later on as an enabling relationship. Although she didn't know, that, and there are many parents in this position and many family members in this position that all they want to do is help. And really the ways that they're helping is only hurting them more. My brother was a product of a child in the Dominican Republic that was taken to the bars and the strip clubs by his father. Long before, if there even is an age where at that time you were allowed to drink, because I think at that point, many years ago, young boys were drinking as early as 12 and 9. And so he was one of those boys. His father, businessman, used to take him along with him, firstborn. And it developed these habits in him. Ultimately, as he grew up, he was known as the golden child. He could do no wrong. If he didn't want to go to school, he didn't go to school. And then slowly, he started falling into this life of addiction, of alcoholism. Ended up, falling into some harder substances once he came here to the United States. And then ultimately deported, because of some legal issues that he came to because of his addiction. So seeing my mother struggle and seeing her entire life till this day, I'll be very candid and honest, not being able to fully enjoy her life because she was so consumed by what he was going through and what he was experiencing. That as children growing up in that environment, we saw that. We saw the pain and the anguish and the stress and the hurt that my mother experienced the entire way through. And so when I talk about secrets, I'm speaking of the things that parents sometimes hold in, not knowing that kids are very observant. We're feeling things before we even see them. And then seeing them is only, the quería decir, I always get my sayings wrong. La agua que derramó el vaso.
La gota que derramó la copa.
Sí, la gota que derramó el vaso. Like it was spilled over at this point, and we're like, okay, like this is what we have. And so you speak of one of the instances where my brother he would disappear, would go on these binges, and my mother wouldn't hear from him. And the first thought was to go to the hospitals and see if that's where he was, because there's been many times where he came home battered and bruised, would turn the corner, we would see him coming down the street, just really beaten up from wherever it was that he came from. So early on, that was our responsibility, especially as we were learning the English language. We were the translators. She would pull us out of school for things like that, in addition to if she had an appointment at the food stamp office or at the doctor's office. That was our role. So felt like we grew up a lot quicker than we should have, right?
Yeah. And to piggyback a little bit on that too, you also talk in the book about this sense of responsibility that you felt all of your life. And I think, again, it's a cultural thing. I think in our countries, like the children are seen as like the parents take care of the children, and eventually the children will become the caretakers of the parents. Like that's why people, like, I hear it, like my husband says it all the time. He's like, oh, he'll call one of the kids, come turn on the lights or come turn off the lights. And I'm like, why can't you just get up and turn? He's like, why do you have kids? That's the reason why we have kids, so they can do stuff for us and eventually, take care of us. So there is this sense of responsibility that you talk about, that you felt, that not necessarily your brother couldn't, but your older sister didn't have, or your younger niece sister didn't have either, but you felt it. You felt like you had to take care of your mom. You talked about getting your first job and getting your little job and then bringing your whole paycheck to your mom. What teenager does that? So can you talk to us a little bit about what the thought process was for you, and how you, even after you were older, later in the book, you talk about being on your own and having your own life and still sending money to your mom because mom needed money to pay the bills, even though you had your own life.
Yes, yeah. So it was my seeing her struggle from as early as I can remember that it kind of created in me this sense of, I need to do whatever it takes to make her happy. That as a kid, 5-6 years old, as early as I can remember, her seeing her feel a certain way or do certain things, and I can sense she was unhappy. In my mind as a kid, I'm thinking, like, what can I do, to make sure my mom smiles, to make sure she's happy, to make her happy. I used to do little things, and I don't think I wrote this in the book, but I used to do little things like hide things, from if I knew she was going to be looking for her.
You did say that in the book.
Yes, I used to take it and I'd hide it, one, as a way to get her mind off of things, and two, because no one was paying me any attention. And I would then miraculously, it would show, oh my God, mommy, look, lo encontré, and then I'd show her, and she caught on to it after a while. She's like, ¿cómo va a ser que cada vez que se me pierde algo? Como que Limari siempre sabe. You know where it is. Every time I lose something, you know where it is. So that was the sense that I had created growing up, that I felt I was responsible for her happiness. Fast forward through my life, that happened with school. That happened obviously with my education. That happened with my profession. And then when we moved to Miami from New Jersey, my father wasn't with us. At that time, of course, I didn't know what was going on in their relationship. I just know that my mother said, we're moving to Miami, and off we went, all the girls and my mom, and no one had a job. And I was like, okay, like, I'm the only one who has a job, so I am working, while I'm in school, my senior year in high school, and paying the mortgage and making sure we have food, and while trying to finish school and all of that. So that's the kind of responsibility I carried on with all my life. And of course that sticks with you even beyond, because now I've graduated college, I've left home, but she's still unhappy. And I'm still like, what can I do? What can I do to make sure that she's happy? And sometimes that meant, sending money home. And sometimes that meant sending her a plane ticket to go and see about my brother. And then, bringing her back, whatever it took. That was my role, I felt.
Do you still feel that responsibility today?
It's funny you should say that, because I had healed from all of that, right? And the thing about the healing journey is it never ends. And my mother is going through the, later stages of her years, and we are now caregivers. And when we moved her from Miami, we started to see her health decline. I saw myself falling back into those habits, and I had to check myself. And I remember my husband being the one to say, I get it. You want to make sure your mother is good, But like, you're hardly ever home, and literally I saw myself like making sure she had her salon and that everything was exactly as it would be comfortable for her. And I saw myself going back into those same old patterns, but now I recognize them. And I had to check myself and backtrack, and thank God for a husband who's understanding and is like, and checks me too. Yes.
So during the time that you were, because you mentioned how you had healed from it, and then you kind of had to check yourself. What are some things that you did to heal yourself to not become an enabler or to engulf yourself into her so
Yes.
much?
The hard part was I had to distance myself because it wasn't healthy for me to continue to give, and felt like I was still not seen or appreciated or considered. Um, I'll tell you that it wasn't until I launched this book, I had a personal book launch, and my mother was listening to them describe, what I do, who I am, what I've done. And I remember seeing her turn to my sister and say, wow, she does all of that, not ever considering to have a conversation with me about my life, in general. I'm just living over here and she's living over there, and we're never really coming together. So that was a real excuse me, a realization for me, that I had to set some boundaries, because I had to do whatever it was that I needed to, including therapy, to get myself in a better frame of mind where I didn't feel like I lacked anything. I didn't feel valuable. I didn't feel worthy. And all because of the relationship I didn't have with my mother. And so I wanted to gain all that back. I needed to understand why the need to feel validated, and bring all that full circle so I can fully heal from it. But certainly therapy was a big, big move for me. And just distancing myself in that isolation period so that I could heal.
Yeah. Let me
I'm
read.
sorry. I just want to read you're gonna have to come back on the show anyway because Maddie is not done with all her pages. But I just want to read a comment from Lily. She says, "Cada historia de estas madres mujeres tan valiosas son las que nos dan estas hijas tan productivas que impactan otras vidas." So I just wanted to read that.
That is so true. My heart.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I just want to read a couple of lines from the book about this particular topic that you guys were talking about. It says, it took some isolation, prayer, meditation, motivational podcasts, books, readings, conversations with my husbands, my friends, even strangers, as well as some deep soul searching to realize that at the end of the day, the one person I must be happy with is me. I can only control myself, my thoughts, my reaction, and my own happiness. And this is like towards the end of the book, page 170. And it's like when I had to stop when I got to that, because I think sometimes, when and again, we didn't even touch on all the other things. We skipped to the end of the book. But anyway, we didn't talk about everything you talked about: failed relationships, with your mom, with men, failed businesses after you got married, trying to have other kids and not being able to have other children. And then so much, everything just kind of went wrong in your life. And then COVID happened and it forced you to isolate yourself and kind of think about this. And then reading this quote, kind of made me take a step back and say, sometimes, we try to find a reason why, a why on everything. This is happening to me and this is happening to me. And then, this kind of just made me pause and, can you talk a little bit about how you got to this point?
Yes. And wow. Yeah, it was a lot, all that you described. And so what I wanted to do with the sharing of my story, was share my perspective on what it was like growing up with a mother like I had. very similar to the mothers that we all have. Very strong-willed, independent, stubborn. And I wanted to come to an understanding about how growing up in this environment made me who I was to a detriment, because I think a lot of times people think perfectionism, detail oriented was like the thing that was holding me back from my own growth and healing. It was wanting to always be perfect. And with every failed thing that happened in my life, it was like a blow to my ego. It was a blow to everything that I considered myself to be. I based my identity on being the perfect child, and I was going to do whatever it took to be that. And even when, for me, this hiccup of, being now a young mom came about, she gave me the courage to get, pull my bootstraps up and say, you're not the first and you're not going to be the last, and you're just going to push on through this and then get it done. And I lived my life that way. I think what I want people to see is that sometimes, even in that hustle and bustle and growth and independence and all the things that I described on this shirt that I am, we have to give ourselves a moment to be soft and be still, and see how every action that we take is often a reaction to something that we're struggling very deeply with internally. And to say that, que somos orgullosa y independiente, that just that word in itself, independiente, is a little bit of a sore spot, because it's being independiente that made me struggle in my marriage initially. It was carrying all these traits that my mother had into my marriage, and then realizing, okay, this is not going to work. Like, so, okay, so how do I do this now? Like, who am I, and how can I make this work? That is how I got here. Just really taking a moment of self-reflection and understanding that I am not perfect, and never will be. And I have to give myself grace and give grace to those around me too, especially my mom.
Definitely. As you're talking, because of course it's reflected on my life, because I am my mother and my grandmother's manager. But they do show me, and they verbalize their gratefulness for the things that I bring to them. And so we have this mutual taking care of each other. So I don't feel like I need to disconnect or disengage, because the moments that I need to disengage, I do, and it's respected by them, if that makes sense. So I just, like you were saying, a lot of the times I had to learn, because my mom, what I used to word stubborn all the time, like she's stubborn, but then I had to change it, because I had to work on seeing her different so that I can embrace who she is. And so I think I changed the word to her just being persistent, or just kind of dedicated or passionate. So I stopped using the word stubborn with her, because it created something negative in my mind about her. So even there was some time also that I kind of felt a lot of friction. And so I actually changed her contact name on my phone to something funny, so that when I saw the caller ID, my mood would change, because it was something funny I saw on the phone, instead of just having her name or mom. So, just little things like that I've had to do for me to be able to change me to see her in a different light. So I just think it's awesome that, because like you're saying, nothing is perfect, but I think it's just the knowing that they are valuable, because a lot of their stories and the things that they've gone through allows me to grow. Like I tell my grandmother all the time, she'll be 90 in November. And there's a lot of things that she doesn't want to talk about. A lot of her struggles, she doesn't want to talk about, because she's embarrassed or whatever the reason is. But I tell her, when she started to express some of those things, it filled me up with energy, because I learned to value her even more. and I understood why I'm here today, and that I didn't just get here the way that I got here. Part of it is because of what she went through for me to be able to be here as well. So I think that's important as well.
Absolutely. And, like I've said before, our mothers were daughters too. And their mothers were daughters. And generationally, they come from an upbringing that way before we even came around, we can't understand. And so I had to really dive deep into that understanding. They came from an upbringing that we can't compare to. And generationally, we're, I think, of that generation where we're cycle breakers at this point in time, because we're seeing all of that didn't serve us. And we have that one person whose sole responsibility within our family is to break that cycle. And it's not easy to do, but it's understanding, how was her relationship with her mother and why? And how was her relationship with her grandmother, and how was her mother's relationship with her mother and why? And understand that they're only doing the best they could with what they had and what they know, and giving them grace, through the process, right? We, as parents, we're all parents here. We wanted and needed grace as we were bringing up our little ones, now big ones. So yeah, I think that's important.
Mm-hmm. Maddie, you can ask the last question because I already know you got 10 of them that you didn't get to.
No, actually, yeah, we are at the end, so I don't want to ask a question. I just kind of want to say thank you again to Lynn for one, for being here, for letting us openly discuss, your book and share. I always say, I said at the beginning, we are so grateful to have this platform that allow us to educate people. And sometimes it's not even about education. It's about telling our stories and putting ourselves out there and hoping that somebody can see themselves reflected in us and say, you know what, she did it, I can do it too. So I just want to read a couple of quotes that when I got to the end of the book, I was like, oh my God, yes. So, page 180, you said, never let yourself stay immobile for too long. Always look for growth. I feel like through this book and the work that you did in the book, especially, towards the end when you talked about how you got there, that was one of the things that you were aiming for. How can I grow? How can I be better from this journey? And then you said, be fearless. You were on the book, you kind of touched on pursuing and looking for what is my purpose? What am I here to do? And you said, be fearless in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire. That hit me in the gut, because it's like sometimes, again, we are looking for what we want to do, but are we really doing what makes us happy? And again, what sets our soul on fire? And then you say, your destiny is already awaiting you. Surrender to the push.
Yes.
I just love that.
Thank
So
you.
Thank you for all of that.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn, for giving us your time. Just your time, really, because and your heart, because we can kind of see your heart being exposed here on the book, and just your personality is amazing. And definitely, we're gonna have to bring you on again, because I know we didn't get to certain topics, but yes, we just want to, just encourage people to read the book for personal growth. For acknowledging, who we are. Sometimes we have struggles in life and we can't put our finger on it or a word on it. And sometimes when we read a book like this, it might bring light, and it might bring, eliminate some type of hurt from our heart just by getting exposed to the topic. So we thank you. And of course, as you know, our time is up, and we always end the show with one of Maddie's poems that are always,
Yes.
So we're ready for you, Maddie.
Again, thank you, Lynn, and this is gonna be a short one. Hopefully, I can get through it. Again, just kind of reading the book and the relationship with your mom. I think sometimes, we look at ourselves and we especially as we get older, we see ourselves becoming our mother, and it's like, oh my God, did I really just say that? That's something that my mom would say, and I remember when I wrote this poem, it was thinking about maybe like a traumatic interaction that you would have had with your parent, and this poem came from the last time my mom hit me with a belt ever. Like my mom, this was the last time my mom put her hands on me, period. So it says, I am her. I learned to carefully love mommy around the edges. Her demure, flammable fury loving me through her anger, suffocating my senses, preparing me perhaps for an overwhelming future version of myself. Her words reassuring, this will hurt me more than it will hurt you. Patiently kissing the pain, nursing each lashing, as if the scars left on my skin reflected the pure affection only a mother on a mission could feel. Reminding me that I am the lesson my offsprings will remember best. Me still holding on to this grudge like a love letter of hurt to her, for us. Transforming, becoming, still loving, now learning to exist without her. Deep down, tears and smiles, times have puzzled together. I am her.
Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That was beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as always. And just the last comment from Tangi saying, thank you so much for your transparency, Lynn. So we definitely have enjoyed having you. And, you have to shoot me an email with the next date that you're available so we can finish talking. Because I'm telling you, Maddie's energy today, she was like, ready, going through her pages.
Yeah, I can only imagine. There's a lot that wasn't discussed in the book, but it's just so powerful, I think, and it speaks to our resilience as women, nuestra cultura también, que nos trae a ser mujeres poderosas, and there's absolutely nothing we can't accomplish, despite all the things that we've been through, right? So I can't wait to keep talking some more about all the amazing things that are in this book to discuss.
Yeah, this is just the beginning. This was just the intro.
Yes. So thank you for having me. I'm truly honored to be here.
Yeah, we loved it. So we just want to make sure that you guys have an amazing week. We want to say thank you to Maddie, to Lynn, to Mark, to the platform of Que Pasa Mujer. And we hope that you guys have an amazing week, as Tangi would say, on purpose, like Maddie says. So we will see you again here next Sunday at 4:00 Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Are just so impressed with them. Like I said, we've been with them for years. I will recommend and refer anyone to them. We stand by A+ academics. They're the best.
A+ tutorial really did help me with all my grades. They all went up when I came to this place. And I would say I recommend this school to everyone.
So it's a really good environment to be in, especially for me, because it makes me look up to my parents.
If you have students that need academic help, A+ Academics is the place to be.
A+ Academics, what a great place to go for academics.
It's just a really great place to learn.